The water sways gently. Fish fly above you, but your little feline paws are ready to snatch something larger. Something stranger. Something bites, and you pull it up. Just another fish, right? But this one wants to get caught. Sent to infiltrate the timeline using the one thing cats can't resist. Fish. Hello everyone! A few years ago, a peaceful little game called Cat Goes Fishing was released, and developed by Cat5 Games. I mostly ignored this game until recently, since I'm not much for fishing games. That was until I saw one of my favorite YouTubers 100% the game. So I had to take a look, and wow, there is so much to theorize about. How has nobody made a theory about this before? I guess it's not the most popular game out there, but still, this is a goldmine for lore. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the deep ocean caverns of Cat Goes Fishing. This standard fishing game has you collect fish, upgrade items like fishing rods and boats so you can explore the ocean. At first, everything seems normal. Just a few small fish. But as you head out further, you get some stranger fish. Fish like the ancient king that have a whole host of guards protecting him. There's also more obscure fish, like the ghost fish that is already dead, yet still haunts the waters. But the holy grail of all, the fish that sparked this theory, the dragon. Yeah, a dragon in a fishing game. As for gameplay, there isn't much story. But when you dive into the fish descriptions, you start to paint a very bizarre and kind of sad story. Let's start with some of the weird anomalies I noticed in the game. First of all, the overabundance in duplicate fish, mainly the kingfish and the ancient kingfish, the dragonfish and the dragon, and the lesser fish like the Nars and the Rena. Like, I love dragons, but I don't consider the dragonfish cool enough to be named dragonfish. Especially when there's literally a dragon in the game. I knew that there had to be more to this story, so I began my research. I started aimlessly scrolling through the Cat Goes Fishing fandom when I found this interesting entry, the chronofish. This small, elegant fish is attracted to anomalies in the space-time continuum. Attracted to anomalies, you say? Like fish that have similar names and traits, yet aren't said to be directly related to each other? Yes, I believe this single, seemingly insignificant fish is the key to cracking this case wide open. And that brings us to timeline theory. There used to be two separate timelines. A timeline with simple fish that lived on instinct, and a timeline with more advanced, even supernatural fish. They came through a portal deep within the time cave. This cave was the weakest point in the space-time continuum, letting the invasive fish pass through. Think of it like a door, but when you step through, you're in a timeline where magic exists. In this timeline, maybe you're a wizard, or you own a dragon instead of a dog, or your house is a treehouse. You are still you, but things are slightly tweaked. The result? Duplicate fish. Extinct fish coming back to life, and sentient kings trying to rule the ocean. When these two timelines merged, the balance of nature was thrown out of whack. Some fish like the Torby and Snuggler nearly went extinct, while other fish like Furrow grew in population. Fish that were thought to be extinct like the clownfish and cuttlecanth were brought back from the colliding timelines. With this influx of fish, carverfish and great carverfish began making more tunnels, more homes for the increasing population. The ecosystem began to balance itself out, but the timeline didn't just bring fish, it brought sentience. Fish like the king built a hierarchy in government. Judging by the Tick-Tick's description saying it dances in celebration of freedom, I think it's safe to assume that the king's ruling was not a morally just one. Now, it's hard to know which fish were for or against the king's rule, but I think the Problematicus, Nautis, and Yellowjack opposed the king's rule, while the king's court, Nightfish Sire, Senti, Stalker, and Paladin worked for him. The rebels. Fish like the Nautis became heroes when you look at their behavior from a fish's perspective. This fish drags down your line, often resulting in the player's line snapping. Tragic for us, but truly an incredible act of moral kindness coming from a fish that just simply wants to rescue his fishy brethren. This fish would definitely have a moral compass, making it despise the ancient fish's harsh ruling. Another great example of sentience, the Problematicus and the yellowjack. These two fish patrol the waters. The yellowjack prevents fish from the east swimming inland, and I believe the Problematicus is doing the same thing, but on the edge of the map. Why is this important? They are containing the time anomaly. Otherwise, these invasive fish could destroy the rest of the ocean's ecosystem. These fish are dedicating their lives to make sure that the anomalies don't escape. This points to the fish's intelligence and why they might not like the king's rule. One part of being a king is expanding your kingdom. In this case, the king could destroy the ecosystem in irreversible ways if he were to expand. That is why the Problematicus, Nautix, and Yellowjack are most likely part of the rebels. Now let's talk about the king's side. The king's court are a group of fish that will protect the king if you try to catch him. This includes the Regina, Crook, Fumer, Cavil, and Bishop. The Crooks were bred by the king to protect them. Personally, I don't think making living weapons is a very morally right thing to do. Between enslaving Tic-Tics and wanting to expand without care about ruining the ecosystem, I don't think you're going to be having many fish on your side. But surprisingly, there are a few. Nightfish sires could have easily fought with the ancient king. I mean, sire is literally right there in the name. Once the war was over, this fish fled into caves and went into hiding. It no longer works for the king, instead choosing to rule over its small posse of nightfish that bring it food every night. The stalker does not need much of an introduction. This fish will follow the strongest fish it can find, aka the kingfish. It might not have had the same goal as the kingfish to expand and rule, but it likely was drawn to the king during his rule, as the strongest fish around, making him loyal to the kingfish. Next is the paladin, but I'll tell you about that fish later. First, let's talk about the war. The war was because of a combination of the king's cruel rule and his wanting for expanding his kingdom. That's when the rebel fish stepped in. There's a good chance that there were a few more sentient fish on the rebel side. Considering the Problematicus is a really strong, large fish, it's not surprising that it could fight off most of the king's forces. The king had no choice but to retreat, but to where? Out of bitterness, he went to the Time Cave. He forced the carvers to collapse the cave's entrance and ridden any possibility of the invasive fish returning home. The king and his party then sealed themselves in the cave, in a last bid for survival. The rebels won, but at what cost? They could never go home now, so they embraced their new home. The water became peaceful again, with only the natural food web taking order. The invasive fish were kept isolated in one spot, and all seemed well. This seems like a tale of two warring fish kingdoms. But something out of this world was involved. Aliens. Hold on, I'm not going crazy. This game does have aliens. Remember the paladin fish that fought with the king? Well, some suspect this is actually a semi-biotical probe sent from a neighboring star system. This probe and the Forbearer fish were sent to monitor the merging timelines that the aliens caused. Yes, the aliens caused the two times merging. The probe monitored within the time anomaly, while the Forbearer, a completely robotic fish, monitored the outer ocean to have a guideline of fish society without anomalies present. The aliens wanted to see what would happen if two timelines merged, more specifically if sentient and not sentient fish coexisted in one time. They opened the rift and let the sentient fish into the ecosystem. They watched diligently, but then something unexpected appeared. Cats. Previous fishermen came to the area. They reeled up the invasive fish, and suddenly scientists got involved. The cats realized some form of time anomaly had occurred. They began to do their own studies, and in the process messed with the aliens' results. That's where we come in. The scientists hired us to capture specimens. That's why even basic common fish sell for $50. The scientists want as many specimens as they can get. If you do what they want, and fish, some species like the torben can go extinct. On the map, there are only 2 torben ever. But these fish aren't dumb. They're actually one of our invasive fish. When this fish goes extinct, it comes back as a ghost during thunderstorms. This supernatural ability to return as a ghost means this is one of the invasive species that came from the other timeline. Why is this important? Well, we are messing up the aliens' results. We are killing species that could go on to live longer, or that could impact the peace and start new wars. The aliens had no choice. The Paladin was reprogrammed to watch their most sentient and interesting specimen, the ancient kingfish, but more importantly, to guard the time cave. Judging by the rocket we see in the background, cats have already begun space travel. Regardless, the aliens don't want us to realize that they are the ones ruining the ecosystem. But like the fish-hungry kitties we are, we don't stop fishing. We decide it's time to go after the ancient king. We fish up all his court, and even the king himself. Now the only thing between the time cave and us is the Paladin. After ruining their experiment, it's time they sought revenge. Those greedy cats could never resist a big, juicy fish. They send the sleeper spy in the form of the Paladin, and so we hook it. We place it in our boat and ship it off to the science lab. Now it's only a matter of time before the aliens seek their revenge. Is the Paladin a bomb? A secret weapon? Maybe it's just a time anomaly. A small, yet cleverly placed ripple in the space-time continuum. No longer contained to the small section of the ocean. Soon anomalies will spread. The Earth will become tainted with anomalies. So what does that mean for us? Well, we're fishing up invasive species, but we're also spreading the anomalies. We're making species go extinct, but we're also ridding the ocean of sentient tyrants. We're hurting a lot of people by bringing these fish inland to study. But are we the villain? We were hired by scientists to fish. We're not trying to be evil, but we are. We are hurting fish, the aliens' research, and messing with the space-time continuum. The aliens might be the villains, but we are just as guilty for spreading anomalies. So next time you want to go fishing, remember you're not just catching fish, you're changing history. Until next time, keep foraging through lore, one pixel at a time.